Andy Lehman from Lifesong for Orphans. Andy, how you doing?
Hey, doing awesome, Brett. Doing fantastic. Good to be with
Excellent.
you.
Yeah, same here, same here. And we are eager. We want to hear and talk about the story of Lifesong. Lifesong is our cause of the month. You guys have been around forever, and obviously associations we've had with kind of the roots of Devoted have been a big part of that too. And here it is right now. It's November, and which is National Adoption Month too. So it only made sense to partner with you guys.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right.
So Andy, tell us just real quickly in a nutshell, what is Lifesong for Orphans?
Yeah, you bet. Uh, Lifesong for Orphans, our mission is let's bring joy and purpose to orphans and vulnerable kids. And real simply, we want to help orphans find families. We want to help orphans become leaders. And business is in our DNA. So business helps fuel the mission of those two things I just mentioned. In terms of we want to create, not just care well for children, but also create jobs for those children as they get older so that they can help break the orphan cycle. So orphans finding families, orphans becoming leaders in business that helps fuel that mission and change the trajectory of orphans and vulnerable kids is a key part of what we do. None of that is easy, but all of that is right and fulfilling. And so we
Yeah.
can't do that on our own. We need partners like you. And so we're thankful and honored that you'd say, "Hey, let's do something together." So
Yeah.
we care for about 18,000 children in 13 countries from an orphan care perspective. Um, and then we've helped about 9,600 children become adopted into families. And so we help remove the financial barrier. There's certain ways we do that. But those are some of the two biggest things that we've done in terms of just kids served, just so you have a thumbnail of that.
Yeah. Well, and I want to dig in specifically on some of that here in just a minute too, but tell us, I mean, you guys have been around at least a little while, so what started Lifesong, and what led to that, and how did you get involved? When did you get involved? And so give us a little bit of background there.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah. Lifesong's been serving for about, we've been doing orphan care work for about 19 years. And I'll tell you a little bit of kind of the origin story and also how I became involved. But really, the mission of Lifesong has really come out of and been birthed out of um, a business owner's journey. And that business owner is Gary Ringer, Gary and his wife Marla. And the nutshell version is they had multiple businesses. They're an entrepreneurial family, so they had businesses taking care of the family in many ways. But on the side, they started a new company. It was a human food manufacturing company, and really that during the course of that business launch, that really led to some anxiety because you're making food for people. If something goes wrong, there's a lot of extra liability, and they were losing money.
Yeah.
So the combination of liability and losing money, Gary and his dad, who are business partners together, said, "You know what? We don't want to make money just for the sake of making money. We want to do something more purposeful than that." And so what they did is they wrote out a vow on a kind of a commitment that, hey, we agree this business, it's not just going to be about us fulfilling the American dream and getting rich. That's not what we want to do with this. Rather, we want to do something more purposeful. So they said, if this business ever grows, becomes worth value, then we want to use the equity in this business to help in some way charitably and philanthropically. And so that was kind of that burden or stress or anxiety in business that said, hey, it's got to be more than making money. That purpose is really what was a birth to say, all right, let's work hard in this business. Let's help create value and grow the business for a purpose. And so when they sold that business, that small struggling business ultimately became successful. They sold out to a worldwide food company. And when they sold that business, then basically the equity in that sale was what was used to help fund the startup of Lifesong for Orphans. And specifically, those funds helped fund the admin and overhead costs of Lifesong, which still is happening today. And we
Wow.
call that the 100% pledge. So when when people give to Lifesong, when you partner with Lifesong, then 100% of your partnership goes right to where you want it to go, adoption funding or orphan care or whatever, and not to admin and overhead costs. We do have those costs, but that's paid for by that foundation, that sale of the business, and a few other businesses and board members that are helping to underwrite that. But that's a little bit of the how we began, and really our desire in the very beginning was there's no reason a child should not have a family, and money should never be the reason a child doesn't have a family. And so we started out doing adoption grants and grew it really from there. We just knew that finances are the number one barrier why
Yeah.
families choose not to adopt, and we wanted to help bring a solution to that.
Yeah. No, that's all. And I love the 100% pledge, which again, you don't, any giving is great, right? But it's so good to know I'm giving $1
That's
and
right.
all 100 cents of that dollar is going to what I'm actually giving to.
Exactly. Yeah.
And not to say I'm overlooking, hey, you've got to have an office and you've got to have this and that and all of that. Those are real costs that make all of that possible. So it's not a bad thing to have to do that. But the fact that I know, I mean, that's amazing. I love that model. And obviously, and I know Gary, we've spent a little time together over the years, and to hear he's been a big cheerleader of Devoted, and
Yes.
but especially from the entrepreneurial side, and being that thinking, hey, business can serve a much greater cause. I love those stories.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep. And part of how I got involved was around the same time that Gary was selling that business. Right up prior to that, I had worked at State Farm Insurance. They have the corporate offices here in Illinois where we work. So I had worked in corporate HR at State Farm, and then my wife and I really felt called to be house parents at a children's home in
Mm.
Indiana. So we served for 2 years as house parents there uh, for at-risk kids, and some of the most fulfilling and exhausting times of our lives. That's no easy task, but that was incredibly fulfilling and a privilege to serve. What we thought was going to happen is I thought I was going to go back to State Farm. That was kind of the arrangement I had with some of the upper management at State Farm. But when Gary had sold the business, then he said, I want to help get this ministry going, that what is now Lifesong for Orphans. And so he offered, hey, could we do this together? And so that was it's been a joy to be a part of this from day one in that sense, and just grow together over the last 19 years. So
Wow.
yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the
And
spot a little bit. I can't imagine over those last 17, 18, 19 years of things that you have seen and experienced. And I mean, what's one or two that just really stands out to you in terms of, seeing, oh my goodness, this is amazing what's being accomplished here.
yeah, wow, yeah. You know, I think one of those was we initially started out doing adoption funding, and which was awesome and is awesome, and that actually has impacted my own family. Two of our four children are through adoption,
Hmm.
so that's been really special. And but also on an early trip, early on, I went to Ukraine, and while I was in Ukraine, I saw the reality of children living on the streets and living in abandoned cars and in underneath like train viaducts, bridges, um, and the reality of them living in sewer
Yeah.
pools, all kinds of stuff. Like, wow, we want to help as many children as possible become adopted. But the reality is only 1% of the orphans and vulnerable children will be adopted. So how do we bring solutions to those that may never be? And that really led to what we call CCP program in Ukraine, which is like a mentoring and coming alongside of orphans there and vulnerable kids there, and then transition homes and sustainable business. And just watching when Gary and Marla and I were in Ukraine and saw the reality of how few will be adopted and what we can do to help do that, that was like, okay, we can do something about this. And still to this day, like it's a both and. Neither one is more important than the other. We want to, so half of what Lifesong does is adoption related still, and the other half the orphan care to help break the cycle. And it's just awesome to watch kids get their dignity back, right?
Yeah.
By their names being changed from orphans to sons and daughters when they're adopted,
Yeah.
or their dignity coming back when they have job skills instead of handouts or deemed, hey, you're going to end up on the side of the road in the ditch dead like your mom or dad. That kind of
Gosh.
curse is all these kids are worth way more than that, and
Yeah.
helping them to be able to discover that they have talents and skills to help lead the next generation. They just need to be cultivated, developed, encouraged, come alongside of, and that's what Devoted and Lifesong can do together.
No, that's great. What you mentioned, and I think it's an interesting twist isn't the right word, but I'll say twist. It came to mind, but an interesting component of value, what you guys do, you said we help orphans become leaders, which, I think normally when any of us think of a adoption organization or orphan organization, there's all kinds of things we think of, but I don't think we typically think, leadership development. So
Yeah,
why has that become such a big part of what you guys do?
that's a really good question. Um, if orphans don't become leaders, or they don't have the opportunity to become leaders, then we've seen the orphan cycle perpetuate. Orphans create more orphans. And they become leaders when they have the ability to graduate high school, for example. And in a lot of the communities we serve, only 5% of the students would graduate high school unless we build high schools. And so we build them. We build the best ones we can create. We staff it the best way that we can, um, and mentor those kids while they're in high school in safe homes, because in those high school years is often when things go off the rails. And so if we can create safe homes, mentoring, and help not 5% graduate high school, but a whole lot more than that. In fact, we have 100% pass rates in graduation rates often. So that's the beginning. But then also, how do we help create job skills? Because the reality is 80% of there's 80% unemployment in the communities where we serve. And so what if they're educated but then can't find jobs? And so we really flip the script, and you Devoted helps flip the script by saying, you know what, we want to help 100% of our kids become gainfully employed through auto mechanics, through agriculture, high-tech agriculture, through welding, construction, trades, so through computer and IT and software development. Those are the initiatives that we are creating and have created so that we can flip the script, not 80% unemployed, but 100% gainfully employed. And then as they learn some experience and skills, we in Lifesong Farms, which is a hydroponic berry farm in Ukraine, and we have it in Zambia and Uganda as well. But in Ukraine, 100% of the management team of Lifesong Farms, 100% are former orphans or refugees who are now agronomists, accountants, quality control managers,
Wow.
sales and logistics. So formerly, kids that were discarded and thought of as not having value have become leaders. It's a long answer to your question. Have
That's
become
great.
leaders, and and that's what we want to create. Now our kids get their dignity back, and then when they all don't have to be leaders on the farm, but if they have job skills, then how can orphans break the orphan cycle if they're robbed of their innocence, their childhood, and saddled with abuse and pain and poverty? How can orphans become leaders to influence families and communities and businesses and churches if they don't have those skills? And so it's like really hard and really
Yeah.
messy and takes a lot more time and money than
Yeah.
we initially think, but it's like that's how we break the orphan cycle.
Yeah. I was just talking with someone the other day, not about, in this realm, but talking about leadership development and the training that requires. And it takes a lot of vision, but nothing works better, right? I mean, even from a business standpoint, you can develop your people, develop your leaders, develop your sales force, whatever it is. And there's no promotion, there's no gimmick, there's no campaign that is better than that. But it takes time. It's a seed that doesn't get planted today and sprouts tomorrow.
Right. Right.
And a lot of times we opt out for whatever that might be, and we don't understand why things don't change long term.
Yeah.
But we've got to cultivate those things, and nothing does it like leadership development. And so
That's
I
exactly
think
right.
it's awesome.
Yeah, and I'll give an example, another example in Ukraine. There's a young man named Sergey, and Sergey grew up in the orphanage, went through our mentoring program, transition homes, was able to obtain job skills training on our Lifesong farms, and he is one of our quality control and agronomists. And so anyway, long story short, one day he's taking one of our deliveries to the grocery stores in Ukraine, one of the higher end. Our berries there, the highest end, are called Lifesong Farms Elite. So he was taking the Lifesong Farms Elite berries to the grocery store. They had purchased our products, and some of the best in Ukraine. And this manager of the store says, "I've been buying berries for 15 years, and I've never seen the quality of berries that you're bringing me today." And for that young man Sergey, who is told you're going to end up on the side of the road dead, like your mom, for him to go from that kind of destiny to skills and being told these are the best berries I've ever seen in 15 years by a credible guy, and we can sell all the berries that we create. So we need to produce more. We're selling all that we have, and like that's dignity for our young men and women to see that.
That's great. Oh man, I could sit here and talk about that all day in and of itself. And I know, by the way, you guys produce great reports. That's awesome. So I love how you document that. And there's a lot on your website. So we all want to encourage everyone to go there. But let's shift specifically to adoptions.
Yeah.
Because again, it's National Adoption Month. And at least for right now, what Devoted is giving to, as I understand it, is directly to adoption grants with you guys. So whatever we give is going to that. So walk me through that, maybe from the perspective first of a prospective family who wants to adopt. What are the challenges they face? How does Lifesong step in? How are you unique in how you do that? Fill us in on how that works.
Yeah, you bet. Well, so oftentimes there's statistics that say, in data research shows about 40% of couples have considered adoption. But only 5% actually do. And when I say 40% considered, I'm talking seriously considered adoption. And only 5% do. And the number one reason why many people don't go forward is really the financial obstacles seem very significant when an adoption can cost $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 to a young couple, to many of us. That seems like a pretty tall hurdle. And so that stops a lot of people. And certainly also the unknowns of adoption. It's not always a really tight timeline or a straightforward process. There are some complexities there. And so because of that, I think fear of the unknowns as well as fear of the finances, those are big barriers. And so that's where an adoptive family, where we come in for an adoptive family, when they feel called, this is what we want to do. They connect with an adoption agency and they fill out initial paperwork, do a home study. And after they do those kind of initial things, then that's when they apply to Lifesong. And we see if we can come alongside their adoption journey and help bring that financial barrier down. We do that primarily through matching grants and interest-free loans. So adoption matching grants and adoption interest-free loans are our two primary tools. We also utilize crowdfunding as well. But essentially what happens is after we qualify a family and see that they have a financial need and that we can help them, and then we commit through partnerships like with Devoted, we commit a matching grant. So we'll say, here is $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 as a match, and we'll help you. We'll give you a toolkit where you share that with family, friends, people you do life with, people in your church, people you work with, and through crowdfunding. And those people they know you, they trust you, they respect you, they want to help you in your adoption. And if they know that their giving is going to be matched dollar for dollar, which is how we utilize those matching grants, then it's a real catalyst and a mobilizer to engage other people. So often our matching grant of, let's just say if it's $4,000, on average, that'll generate 3 times that, another 10, 12,000 or more. And so that's how we steward our funds that the people give. We try to mobilize and really accelerate that. And then another way is through interest-free loans. There is a federal adoption tax credit, which is a great help, but often they won't get that tax credit for a few years down the road. So we do interest-free loans to help bridge that upfront cash flow crunch for an adoptive couple, and they make a covenant agreement to repay that loan interest-free. That's how we have helped come alongside those 9,600 children so far. So
Yeah.
and the reality is 93% of families that apply to Lifesong could not complete that adoption without our help. And so that's why partnerships with Devoted is so important.
Yeah. Well, and again, just the impact of that, to think that of those 9,600, what would it be? 9,300 wouldn't have happened based off your stat, right?
Right.
Without,
Yeah.
and so, and then what's happened from that, right? I mean, not just children's lives who've changed, although they have, but the entire family,
Exactly.
the community, the church, the ripple effect is amazing.
That's exactly right. Exactly. And then when somebody says, wow, I watched them go through that adoption process, maybe God's calling us or inviting us to do the same thing. Maybe we can do that. Maybe that's not so scary. It's a good contagious effect of that really creates awareness, engages others, because there is urgency in this. And, with the pandemic, adds more urgency, right? There's um, more fragility within families, economies, and more. And there's brokenness, so we need um, healthy families to step up and adopt now more than ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then so the other side of that is when people give to Lifestyle, obviously that's one of the major things they give to, and can support that. And you have the 100% pledge, which is great. I know it's helping with that. But then you also have through your, orphan care that you do in the other countries and things like that. If I understand it correctly, you have a child sponsorship type program, which many people are familiar with, something like that, and other ways that it supports them. But tell us a little bit about the Lifesong approach there, in terms of what you're doing in those instances.
Yeah. Yep. Well, when our approach as it relates to even child sponsorship and through adoption, we have a 4-part pledge. We really want to make sure, whether it's adoption or a child being sponsored, that they have no want for food, clothing, medical care, shelter. That's a bigger approach right there. So that's part of our 4-part pledge. No want for those basic needs. They have a solid education that provides a foundation to be leaders, and that they're really mentored uh, to know their maker and be actively involved in faith community.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, the 4th thing is that they can transition to successful adult living and break that orphan cycle. So that's really our commitment, our approach, and whether it's adoption, foster care, orphan care. That's what we're trying to accomplish there.
Yeah. What does that look like? So if I wanted to sponsor a child through Lifesong, what's the cost? What's that look like?
Yeah, you can do a partial sponsorship, or a full sponsorship. So a partial sponsorship is $34 a month, and a full sponsorship is $68 a month. So you could split a sponsorship of a child with another individual. That's kind of how you can do the partial. Or if you say, hey, I really want to come alongside and meet all of that child's needs, and that's the $68 a month. And so often it looks a little bit different in each of the schools and locations that we're at. But generally speaking, what that covers, nutritious meals every single day.
Mm-hmm.
It provides the solid education that we talked about. It provides gospel-centered care and safe living, and job skill training as the kids get a little bit older. So that's what it is. And again, that 100% pledge applies to that. So 100% of that child sponsorship goes right to the children we serve. And it's really fun and meaningful when you are sponsoring children and you grow with them year after year after year. And like this past summer, we had our first ever graduating high school class in Haiti, and such a thrill for sponsors to be able to say, I came alongside of them for many, many years to watch that happen. The picture I have behind me is the first ever graduating class in Zambia at Lifesong School in Zambia. And the same thing there, where sponsors have come alongside faithfully over a long period of time. And we value that. Our kids need that. And there's some great relationships that can happen too, because there can be letter writing and communication that go back and forth between sponsor and child.
Yeah.
And so that's special. And then periodically, even as people join us on vision trips, there's an opportunity to meet some of the kids you've sponsored as well.
Yeah. I wouldn't expect you to remember all of these, just rattle them off, but I think you mentioned you guys are in 13 countries. So Phyllis, what are the ones that come to mind? Where are you guys at?
Yeah. Yep. So Zambia, Uganda, Tanzania, Liberia, Ethiopia, Cambodia, Thailand, Haiti, Guatemala, Mexico, Ukraine, and South Korea. And I can't remember if I mentioned Tanzania or not. So it's a little swath of, and some are small in terms of maybe serving 30 or 40 kids, and others are a couple thousand children that we're caring for. So it varies a lot.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a soapbox for a second here and take full advantage of it. But what kind of a two-pronged question, what is you like looking out 6, 12, 18 months from now, what is the greatest need that you're seeing? What has changed, what's new, however you look at that. And then the other part of that can be, what is it that constantly people just don't get about what's going on, that probably frustrates you, and it's like, this needs to be known. So answer that however you want to, but take a moment.
Yeah, that's really great. I think one of our looking at, I would say some of the needs that we see the most, there are always funding needs because that fuels ministry. But also, even if you have funding and don't always have, you need people, the right kind of skilled people as well. So skilled people in the United States and skilled national leaders, Zambian, Haitian, Ukrainian. So the need for people who have skills to be willing to train, mentor, come alongside of others in a way that they can create economic value, meaning job skills, job creation, business creation. Really, what we have seen is business owners in the US and in those countries who have skills that say, I'm willing to share, teach others to do what I do. And there's a certain niche that I've found or value add in a product or a process or a service, and we want to help you create that in the countries you serve. That is awesome, right? That's a big need. And so just kind of networking for God to raise up the right kind of national leaders that are skilled, help us to identify who they are, both in the US and in those 13 countries. And that's probably the biggest need. Secondly, I would say that sometimes, maybe the things we sometimes don't get is that although we have a lot of ideas and we bring funding, we don't know everything. We, meaning Americans who are trying to serve. And so I feel like we all, child sponsors, givers, Lifesong staff, board members, all of us, there are big needs, right? And complex needs. And we have a certain American way of doing things sometimes, but those don't always work in context. And nor do we want to come in arrogantly and say, hey, here's our solution to that. I see this need, here's how I'm going to solve it. But rather, how do we seek to understand, ask really good questions within Zambia, within Haiti, within Ukraine, within the countries we work, and then work collaboratively, humbly, working together. That's how we get better solutions, go further faster, have greater impact really than a big flash or a big rescue and a big help, but that really we were overlooking some other things culturally, that context. And I feel like we've been doing this not that long, but say 19 years, that's not
Yeah.
a long time, but I feel like we still are learning that. We still, so I just think as we serve, we need to serve humbly and remember that all of us, that it's collaborative and we can do more together in partnership than we all can do on our own. And so let's
Yeah.
listen, seek to understand.
Oh, that's great. Well, I think you brought one up too that I am curious about, like how, from just an operational standpoint, how do you do this? Like, how are you, how do you get up and going in Tanzania? And, I mean, is it, yeah, tell
Yep.
us about that.
Yeah. Well, really, all the projects that we're involved in, the partnerships that we have in those countries, there are a few that we started kind of from the beginning, but most of them we came alongside in the existing project. So really networking and trying to understand who are national leaders that have an ability, a vision, and a little bit of a track record that we come alongside of them. That's better and usually wiser than to start from scratch, because generally there's some really awesome people doing some good things, maybe just need a little bit of funding or a little bit of accountability or a little bit of coaching or a little bit of connecting. And that's what Lifesong can help do. And so as we come alongside those indigenous national maybe key leaders or starters, we also say, all right, we want to help develop a board, a local in-country board of kind of advisors for accountability, for help, for collaboration, as well as we have advocates in the US that work with that in-country board. So we that's part of how we structure this. Each country, each initiative has a board of advocates that are helping oversee and collaborate and network, and keep good communication flow. We also are one of our closer partners is what's called Christian Alliance for Orphans, or CAFO. The CAFO organization, CAFO Summit, is a great networking opportunity that we all learn how to get better in these practices. And so that's part of how operationally we learn from others. We network a lot, we collaborate a lot, and we try to have local, I won't say ownership, because we don't own things as much as we are stewards of things and people. And so that's how we steward it locally. It's not corporate Illinois office and
Yeah.
people. We're trying to be collaborative with local leaders and local boards, local advocates as well.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah. It's not like you're sitting there like cranking out like adoption franchises, right? I mean,
Right.
you're like,
Right.
no, what does it need to be here? Which I think is great.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, I think this has been awesome, and I kind of want to high level summarize for everyone, because obviously you can help support Lifesong by shopping with Devoted. We would love that. And for every preferred customer and affiliate, we give back an additional $350 every month. But even if you don't want to do that, what I want to do is encourage everyone either above and beyond that, or instead of that, if you hear something here that's like, hey, I want to be a part of that, by all means, please do it, because you can hear the impact that's happening here. You've got parents who want to take care of some children who are going to have that fulfilled. You're going to have children who want parents. You're going to have orphans who are being sponsored and being taken care of in a very godly, Christ-centered way and having their needs met. And then they're going to have the opportunity to be leaders, and all that talk implies. I mean, and we didn't even talk about this, but I know too, you also partner with actual churches a lot and help them understand how they can support in these ways. And so there's such an ecosystem there, and you guys get involved in all of it, and it's such a great way to give. So if someone wants to somehow get involved, what's the best thing for them to do, Andy?
Yeah, we'll definitely buy and sell the Devoted products. That's the best thing.
Thank you. There you go.
And then alternatively, also connect at lifesong.org. That would be a great place. I just think that we are so thankful for how the partnership can help adoption grants happen, help change names from orphans to sons and daughters. That's what we get to do. There are two young men. Briefly, I'll just share this story.
Mm-hmm.
One boy, his name is Miles. He spent 15 years in a crib in Ukraine. 15 years. 15 years in a crib. And weighing only 15 pounds. And his body has been bent and broken, twisted by things in this world. And yet a couple says, hey, I will adopt Miles. Who's willing to do that? I mean, followers of Jesus do that. And let's come alongside them, because Miles and his brother Jonah, actually, Jonah, before he was adopted, was about a month away from dying of a bone infection. So here are these two boys, discarded, cast away, who a couple says, hey, we will bring them into our family. How can we not? We want to help make that happen and turn Miles and Jonah from orphans to sons, right? Adoption is the visual gospel. That's what we get to do together. And I'm thankful for it. There's urgency in this. There's also joy in this, but let's keep partnering together.
Yeah, I love that. Adoption is the visual gospel. That's outstanding. Awesome. And I didn't even mention too, obviously, we're big fans of Gobina Coffee, which is actually how I was introduced to you guys. And they're in the marketplace now. So if you like coffee and great coffee and you buy Gobina, they also give 100% of their profits to Lifesong.
Exactly.
So it's all kinds of ways that you can give back, and especially with the holidays up around the corner. Hey, your shopping this year could do all of that. So that's pretty cool.
Kingdom shopping. That's what that is.
That's
Exactly.
it. I like it.
I
Hey,
like
thanks.
the Guatemalan beans and the Ethiopian beans. Those are some of
Yeah,
my favorites.
I like I like both of those too. The Ethiopian is excellent. I do that one all the time. So, well, hey, thank you. And I'm looking forward to helping you now, and devoted to helping you guys now and helping you later, and seeing what comes of it and celebrating all of that. And so, yeah, thank you very much.
It's our joy, and we're better together. If any of us want to go somewhere fast, we can go alone. But if we want to go further, we go together. And partnership together is a beautiful thing. We're gonna go further, and orphan impact and adoption impact.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy.